This is the Johnny Cleveland Podcast, all things Cleveland sports, with your host, John Suchan. And good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Johnny Cleveland Podcast, part of the Fanatical Elves Network and Fans First Network. We appreciate you coming on board, watching us here live. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and the X. Now, the X has been giving us issues, so I'm going to, during this broadcast, try to get it playing here live on the X. If you can't see us right now on X, probably. So, anywho, welcome. It's good to talk to everybody here. The Browns are always in the news. We're going to talk a little bit about the new hire on the defensive coordinator position. We're also going to talk about some other situations with the Brownies and Wyatt Teller. And the Olympics. We'll finish with some conversation on those grand games up there in Milan, Italy. Have some stories to share on that. But again, it's a Wednesday night. We've got a couple shows just to let everybody know here on the Fanatical Elves Network tomorrow evening. The Browns Blitz with Rod Bloom and his brother Jeff are going to be have a special guest tomorrow. They're going to be coming on early, I believe, like at 6:00. So if you're a Browns Blitz podcast or you like to listen to their show, they'll be on a little bit early tomorrow evening. We have a new Fanatical Elves show coming up. Not sure if we're going to have that tomorrow night. We may be doing that either Friday night or Saturday. We've got all sorts of things going on with our other colleagues. But we will have that show on. Lots to talk about if you're a Cleveland Browns fan or a Cleveland fan in general. So the news today was that Wyatt Teller, the offensive lineman, 7 years in Cleveland, made an announcement on Instagram that he's going to be leaving Cleveland. No, he's a free agent. He was traded here to Cleveland from the Buffalo Bills back in the day. He had a very nice Instagram post today, if you caught it, and it shared a little bit about his time in Cleveland. He got married to his wife here in Cleveland. He had 2 children here in Cleveland, and Cleveland will always have a special place in his heart. So that was nice. Wyatt Teller is popular amongst Browns fans because, he gave a lot of great effort. He could trample on the opponent, pancake them as we have seen by him. And he addressed that in his farewell to all Cleveland fans who are the best in the world. We are the best fan base on the planet. So Wyatt Teller is not coming back. That was kind of suspected that would be the case. The Browns could very likely have an entirely new offensive line as we get into next season. Now, there will be a few guys that are coming back. DeJuan Jones, for example, the Ohio State Buckeye. Luke Wimpler, also from the Ohio State Buckeyes. Those guys will be around. Joel Bitonio, the longtime vet for the Brownies, is still trying to make a decision if he's going to retire or not. I believe he's going to retire. But the Browns gave him an extension of time to think about it. He was supposed to have made a decision 2 days ago. Understanding is that the Browns moved that date back a little bit to give him more time to make a decision. So in the meantime, the Browns are going to have to figure out how they're going to rebuild several portions of their team, including their offensive line. They need help in the wide receiver room. The Browns currently are somewhere around $18-19 million in the red with the cap space. Now there's options for this team to do what they do with that. Some current players. I know Denzel Ward, for example, on the defensive back unit, longtime vet, isn't going anywhere, but there's been a conversation about his contract. Would it be redone or extended somehow like some of these other contracts that Andrew Berry have pushed out? So we'll see. pause here just for a quick here moment while I try to bring up our feed here on the X. I'm going to try this one more time. I tried this the other night on our revamped Stirring the Pot show. Catch that. It was on Monday night. Had a lot of good discussion there. Let me get back to this. Okay, we're going to do the live button. Open. And hopefully this works. Maybe as I share it. We're going to post this link right now. So hello, all of you. If you're going through your X feed, you hopefully now can see that we are live on the Jenny Cleveland podcast. So thanks again for tuning in. Was explaining before those of you who are watching on Facebook and YouTube that the X has been having issues, and it's not our problem, it's the X's problem. StreamYard, who we do our shows through here on the Fanatical Elves Network, informed everybody that uses StreamYard in the last week that X is having issues posting live feeds. And the funny thing is that here at the Fanatical Elves Network, we just decided to get the blue check mark, which was supposed to be able then to put the live feed out automatically. Well, lo and behold, X decided to not cooperate. And so I don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but StreamYard and the X and whatever else, they're trying to figure all that out. But they gave us instructions on how to post it on live. So here we are. We're live. Thank you for joining us here tonight on the Fanatical Elves Network. So we were talking about Wyatt Teller, if you missed that part of the conversation. And Wyatt Teller came out earlier today and gave a sympathetic, goodbye, farewell to all of Browns fans around the planet. One more second here. And we will miss him. But, what we were saying too is that the Browns have to make some decisions with the offensive line. They may have a completely different group of players on that offensive line. There are some players coming back like DeJuan Jones, Luke Whippler, also from both guys are former, from Ohio State formerly. So those guys might be coming back. But besides that, it could be a totally new look. I mentioned also right before I got broken up here, Denzel Ward, looking at what are the Browns going to do with his cap? Because right now we're in cap hell. We're negative $19 million. Now the Browns will probably look to extend or revamp some of these current contracts like Denzel Ward. The Browns do have a new defensive coordinator. We'll talk about him in just a second, but his name is Mike Rudenberg, was the passing game coordinator for the defense. So we'll see how that all plays out. But like somebody like Denzel Ward isn't going anywhere. Some people have speculated, what would he be, a cap casualty? No, he's not going to be. He's not leaving the Browns. Those of you out there who are trying to push that narrative, that's not going to happen either. So there are players, though, the Browns are going to have to figure out how to get in here to Cleveland to replace all these guys that are not going to return. Like I mentioned also Joel Petonio. One of these guys and one of the potential trade that somebody proposed recently, a writer for ESPN, talked about a player by the name of Walker Little. Walker Little currently plays for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's in the middle of his current contract that he signed an extension on. He's due around $11 million next year. He's been in the league for 4 or 5 years right now, and actually he had a very good last season. He played in 95% of all offensive snaps, so that's good. He limited his mistakes. He was only called for 7 penalties a year ago. Most of those were motion penalties, so that's good. With the Brown, they were in this article talking about that, Jacksonville needs some new players on their offensive line. So the trade basically was the Browns give Jacksonville their fifth round draft pick, and in return the Browns get this player Walker Little and a seventh round pick. I wrote about it here on Dog Pound Daily. You can check that article out right now. It came out earlier this afternoon, Dog Pound Daily, about Walker Little potentially coming to Cleveland in a trade scenario. Browns are going to be involved in a lot of trade scenarios and rumors and blah, blah, blah. Now, the free agency market, there are, a plethora of offensive linemen that are available. But again, what the Browns are going to do, how they're going to create money and cap space right now, it's hard to really see how that's all going to play out at this moment. So we'll let things happen. We have the combine, the draftable players from the collegiate level starting at the combine on Monday from Indianapolis. So that'll be interesting and fun to watch. We'll all be talking about draft picks again. We were talking about draft picks earlier this week, and last week I wrote another article with Dog Pound Daily. A lot of you have been on this bandwagon, not a bandwagon, but it was the story of the week toward the end of last week. Oh, hey, the Browns might consider going after somebody like Caleb Downs, the safety from Ohio State, likely the best player on the draft board, hands down athletically. Now, he's a safety. Typically, safeties don't get drafted that high up. The last safety that happened with was Jamal Adams, who played for the New York Jets, and we all know how terrible the Jets are. That was another thing. I know one of you, shout out to my colleagues there in Licking Heights in our fantasy league football group. One of my group members there wanted to remind me that the New York Jets have won a Super Bowl. Yes, that Super Bowl happened in 1969, the year that I was born. So I don't really count that. So if you want to discuss how the Browns, who's worse, the Browns or the Jets? The Jets are just pathetic. I mean, can we all agree? I mean, come on. They're the Jets. They're not going to win a damn thing ever. So, but getting back to the whole Caleb Downs situation, I would love to see the Browns draft Caleb Downs. Do I think they're going to do it? Probably not. Do I think it could work for the Browns? Absolutely. If they get out of their own way and just draft the best player that's there. Now, he might not even be there at number 6. Somebody in the top 5 might end up taking him. Would not surprise me one bit. But some of you out there that are arguing that, well, Caleb Downs wouldn't, fit. We already have Grant Delpit. Well, Grant Delpit, I mentioned this the other night in the other show, Stirring the Pot. Check that one out. Is going to be 27 years old. No, he's going to be 28 years old as the season gets started. He's going to be in the last year of his contract. And yeah, I mean, he'll have a great season. He'll play it out. Maybe he signs something before the season gets started. But some of you who are saying, well, you can't have both. Well, yeah, you can. Absolutely. He's a great player, Caleb Downs. This guy is not your typical safety. He's 21 years old. You could plug and play this guy anywhere. He has outstanding instincts. He's quicker than all get out. Put the guy on the field and let him play football. And I think the Browns might be more intrigued. I definitely think there's a better opportunity for them to take Caleb Downs now that Kevin Stefanski is gone. We've got at least a football guy, and Todd Monken, who wants to win football games. Not that Kevin Stefanski didn't want to win football games, but you get my point. I hope maybe not. I think Todd Monken's just going to be a more hard-nosed kind of guy, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that does with this group and how it inspires them or doesn't inspire them. We'll find out soon enough. The Browns came out, or not the Browns didn't, but Vegas came out earlier today and started putting odds on how many wins the Browns will have going into next season. They have them listed right now at 6.5 wins. I'll take the over on that. right? Come on now. Browns can win 7 games next year. I think I put last year at this time, well, last year before the season started, they had Vegas had him at 7.5 wins, and I took that. We lost. I had them winning 8, but they won 5. So, but we all know they had every year. We all know this about the NFL. It's a very competitive league and can come down to just a play or two. So keep that in mind. Now, the Browns did bring in a new defensive coordinator named Mike Rudenberg. Rudenberg does not have any defensive coordinator prior experience, but he was recently in Atlanta with the Falcons, and he had been their passing, like I mentioned before, their passing defensive guy. And people have been talking about watching tape and seeing how he was disguising different schemes in the backside of his defense with the defensive backs. And obviously, somebody like Denzel Ward and the players that they have back there, like Grant Delpit, will do some really good things. Ronnie Hickman, another Ohio State player, all these folks will do a good thing with Rudenberg. And I think listening to these players from Atlanta who learned under him and were coached by him, no, I haven't heard anybody say anything but the fact that this guy is a football guy and he's a guy that the players love. And I think that that's what I like most about what I'm hearing about this new coaching staff and the head coach, Todd Monken, is I think that these guys are going to really stay in tune with these players, and that's going to motivate this Cleveland Browns team more than some suspect. And I know I go back a few weeks ago, and some of you out there who are still trying to debate Shador Sanders, and I know the season hasn't started, and I know the Browns aren't going to come out and say he's their number one guy, but there's been some debate about that in the last 2 weeks that the Browns just announce that Shador Sanders is the number one guy going into the season and not make it another crazy competition like they did last year that made everybody look foolish. If it's, here on, for me personally, as a, I mean, Shador is a young guy. Would I make that? I don't know if I would make that call just because of the fact that Shador right now is a rookie or was a rookie. He came in late in the season, and there are other quarterbacks on the roster. No, Deshaun Watson is not going to play another down for the Browns. The Browns are going to go out and probably get another veteran or two. So, I don't know if I make that announcement. I know some people have talked about it. I do think, though, that people are discounting, and those of you Browns fans and analysts out there that watch these games, though, there are just some of you who just do not like Shador Sanders. You don't want to openly admit it. You don't like to say that you just don't like the guy. You don't like his attitude. You don't like, I mean, we've talked about this before. You don't like the fact that he's the son of Deion Sanders. And those of you who typically aren't liking Shador never liked Deion. Be honest. That's the truth for many of you who dislike Shador, because Shador did come in and did some really good things. No, he wasn't awesome all the time, but folks, he won 3 games. He went 3 wins and 4 losses. And some of you who want to discard wins and losses is what only matters in the NFL. The Browns have been, losing. They ended up being 5-12 last year, but guess who won 3 of those games? They're right, Shador. So I don't know if I go out there and announce that Shador is the guy, but I certainly think that Shador should have the upper hand and should be given every opportunity. And I guess what I'm getting back to is a few weeks ago, I started talking about this, and I'll come back to it. Todd Monken, that situation where, not the situation, but when Todd Monken and they were taping this and in front of the cameras and stuff, but Shador comes in and meets Todd Monken for the first time. That that interaction between coach and player was genuine. That's not fake. And that situation right there and how that looked and felt, it looked and felt like a coach and a player that were on the same page. And that's going to work in both the coaches and Shador's favor going into this season. It was real. And Shador's going to work his butt off. He's a worker. Some of you want to discount Shador for a number of things, but Shador Sanders is going to study and get better and learn because he's got now people that are really, really 110% behind him. I know there's a lot of conversation and a lot of things that came out last season talking about, well, Kevin Stefanski sat with him and worked with Shador, all these things on a daily basis. I'm not going to discount that, but what was that like? Because we all have, those of you, who are older or anybody who's worked a job or anything, when you work with different people, how is that really? You can say that these things are happening, but how is that look and feel? Because you can say, well, they're working together, but it can be discombobulated, disjointed, and dysfunctional. And so that's something that, I know the Haslams, the owners of the Browns, have Jimmy has often said, "Well, I don't like use the word dysfunctional, but we should all be able. We're fans, we're analysts, we watch what's going on, and no, we're not behind closed doors. We're not in that locker room all the time, but there was a lot of discombobulation, and that's why Stefanski is gone. It just ran out of steam. Stefanski and his crew and that all that stuff just ran out of steam. It was 6 years. It was 6 years, and it was inconsistent up and down throughout that 6 year time period. We'll see what Todd Monken can do. Todd Monken is older. Todd Monken has much more football experience, not as head coach. Uh, so we'll give it some time. Some of you guys that are out there, especially some of the local media, ripping like ESPN Cleveland. You guys are ripping the one day. Tony Rizzo, you're out there ripping um, the whole how things have been put together for Todd Monken and the coaching staff. I have no idea. I mean, I know you have your people on the inside that knows some information, but my God, not even giving this new group of coaches and staff members in the Cleveland Browns organization an opportunity before you just start tearing them to shreds and discuss like saying how it wasn't Todd Monken's decision. You don't know that. These guys have all worked together. My God, Todd Monken's probably one of the older people in the room now. He's an elder. Give the guy an opportunity, and I'm sure he did have an opportunity. And I'm sure he and the Haslams and Andrew Barry, they're all working together. That's what Stefanski always liked to talk about, that they are working together. So let's really trust the process just for a second before we start damning them and saying that they're not going to be any good. Be a Browns fan and support these guys. Let's pause for a quick commercial break. This is the Johnny Cleveland podcast. Welcome back to the Johnny Cleveland podcast, part of the Fanatical Elves Network, and a shout out to Hemisphere Coffee Roasters. They shake the hand of the farmer. Check them out. We have a link on our X page at the top. Click on it on our feed, and then you will be supporting the Fanatical Elves Network by shooting back 15% to our programming. So thank you so much. Couple of short stories here with the Browns before we leave the Browns topic. I did two things I wanted to mention. There's been some discussion in the last day or two or week about Kyler Murray, who currently is a quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals, and him potentially coming to Cleveland in some sort of trade when the Cardinals want to dump salary or move on from him, cut him or whatnot. The Cardinals are in cap hell as well. Kyler Murray would not make, no way. Just get that out. Like if Kyler Murray comes to Cleveland, like I'm I'm not done, but that's just boneheaded on with the Browns organization and making a move. They would not make that move. I ugh, that would be terrible. Kyler Murray is a shrimp. His overall record is 38-48. He sucks. No, I know some of you will say no, he doesn't suck. Okay. He's 38 and 48. All that matters in the NFL is wins and losses. He has not been healthy for the last several seasons, on and off. Yes, he throws the ball for 3,000 or close to 4,000 yards, and I know what his stats are. But if we're talking about wins and losses, he's 38 and 48. He's 5'8". He's not going to make this Cleveland Browns offense any better than it is right now by giving Shedeur Sanders the keys to the car. No way. So some of you who are, there's other articles out there about, Kyler Murray maybe going to the Jets, who I just talked about, who are even worse than the Browns. Fine, let him go to the Jets. But he's not going to be a Cleveland Brown. So some of you out there that are trying to, that's kind of the topic of the day. Kyler Murray, no way in hell should be coming here to Cleveland in any sort of trade. And I know what the stats say, but the stats also say that the guy is 38 and 48. He was drafted, yes, number 1 in 2019. Their team sucked that year. They were 5-10. And if you want to go look by wins and losses, he has been unsuccessful every season he had played for the Cardinals. I think they had one season that they were 500, maybe. The Cardinals have been crappy in the same time period the Browns have been. The Browns have been better, obviously, than the Cardinals overall, but no way, Jose. Kyler Murray, get out of town. Yeah, I know he had one good game when he came here to Cleveland, and some of you still want to talk about that because he had one good game. No, and then listen, man, when the Cardinals, there was one season that they were high powered, had a lot of offense. I was at that game. I got season tickets. I get it. I understand what you guys saw. And yeah, he had a good game, and the Cardinals, I think, beat us badly. But there was one game, not entire career. The guy is injury prone. He's a crybaby. I don't care if he's throwing the ball for 4,000 yards. I'd rather have Baker Mayfield back here than Kyler Murray, if that's the case. So get the Kyler Murray crap out. And if the Browns decide to go that route, I would be shocked. Completely shocked. Give the keys to the car to Shedeur Sanders and let him move forward with Todd Monken. Lastly, with the Browns, did come out today that they have agreed, the Haslams, the owners of the Cleveland Browns, to go with Legends Global as their new partner in crime for concessions and suites and all this stuff instead of Aramark, which is the current concession group. So they will be leading the charge. They indicated in their articles that came out today that they would be working with local culinary people in Cleveland, probably, restaurants and business people in Cleveland, to make it a Cleveland flavored opportunity. So look forward to that, see what that's all about. I guess Legal Legends Global now owns or leads the charge in half of NFL stadiums across the country. So there you go. The Browns are going to be switching up to a new concession area. Hopefully they still have, the all important stadium mustard. I'm thinking about bringing back the Stadium Mustard show. Some of you who have followed our Johnny Cleveland podcast for the last several years and also our Fanatical Elves Network know that I did introduce a show called Stadium Mustard, trying to have a colleague at work potentially who he and I have been discussing bringing that show back, where we will be talking about food, and more food. Are you hungry yet? Lastly, here, the Olympics. Yeah, the Olympics. Have you been watching? It's getting close to the end. Tonight, they were showing the snowboarding. Crazy stuff. Some of this in this hockey, or no, well, the hockey was earlier today. Now, I'm not a big hockey guy, but I don't typically always follow hockey that closely. But apparently, according to my colleagues in the fantasy football group, I heard earlier that Quinn Hughes got the winning goal in overtime. I don't know who Quinn Hughes plays for in the NHL. If somebody wants to let me know. but he got the winning goal. So congratulations to the United States as they're going to now play in the semi-final game in a couple, what, maybe Friday, and then if they win that, then they'll be in the finals, obviously. So the Olympics, it always brings back memories for me. And when I was younger, and maybe some of you have heard the story before, but I had the opportunity, thanks to my good old dad, uh, took me and my sister out up there to Calgary, Canada, in 1988 when the Olympics were held there. Do you remember that? 1988 held up there in Calgary, Alberta, in Canada, where we stayed with a family. You know, they had hotels and different things, but they also had people where you could go and you would stay, and they would be like a host family. So we went there and stayed with a host family for over a week and took part in a lot of Olympic activities or watching, obviously, as spectators. And it's always fun. I go back, look back at old photos from 1988. I was graduating high school that year. It was in February. What I remember about Calgary too, that time period, it was during the winter games, but it was warm. It was very warm. It was mild in the 50s and 60s, and all the locations in the mountains they were having to make the snow because there wasn't any snow. And so we went out to like the skiing events. We also watched the bobsledding. We went to a few hockey games. I remember distinctively Finland playing Sweden in one of the games that I watched. So those were all pretty cool events. Getting there was even the best part, the better part, because the story goes, true story, and any of you, you may, if you were back in 1988, maybe you were on the same flight. It was a DC-10, 1988. We were leaving. We'd flown from, I think, Cleveland to Chicago, and then the flight was from Chicago up to Calgary. In our takeoff out of Chicago, I think we were in Chicago O'Hare Airport. Not kidding you here. There was snow or thunder snow situation because remember it was like mid-February. We taking off and our flight got struck by lightning. That actually happened. There's a big bolt. You get a big brightness in the sky. You could tell something had happened. Fortunately, nothing horrible. The pilot came on moments later and informed everybody that yes, indeed, the plane had been struck by lightning, and that indeed the one of the engines, we had four engines on the plane. The one of the engines was struck and knocked out. The pilot said, "Fortunately, we can fly on the other engines, but the fourth engine helped control the altitude of the plane, and we couldn't get above a certain altitude, and because of that, we couldn't realistically climb above the Rocky Mountains." So he said that we were going to circle Chicago airport and we were going to return and land, and then we would look to take off again. And that's what we did. We landed, we reboarded, we got on a new flight, and that took us, we thought it was going to go to Calgary. But what happened was that the crew on that flight had reached their maximum number of hours. And I remember this distinctively. They came on and said, as we're in flight, that we were going to be diverting to, I think it was Spokane, Washington, where we landed in Spokane, Washington, and the flight, they put us in a hotel, all the passengers, and then the next morning we flew up to Calgary. Interestingly enough, on that flight, and I've told some of my colleagues this recently, there was the U.S. curling team on that flight and several American sports writers, including Frank Deford. Some of you who watch and listen to sports might recognize that name, Frank Deford. Really good sports writer, Sports Illustrated, I think, and other periodicals over the years. And there were some other folks from Cleveland who were on that flight who were sports writers. But I just always remember that. I remember seeing the part of the curling team. You know, we be in the hotel, and then the sports writers. It's very surreal. And we finally got to Calgary, and everything was fine after that point. But it was rather dicey, a little scary, being young. I was nervous about it like everybody, but everything worked out okay. But it was really a really cool experience. The other part of being there, and I know you can kind of see it if you're watching the Olympics, but the camaraderie and the world, how all of these different nationalities and people come together and celebrate, and the waving the flags and all of that is really true. It's one of the cooler experiences you will ever have in the world of sports. If you think globally and not just here in the United States, but globally, the popularity of football or soccer is much more popular than any NFL football. Yes, NFL football is great, but worldwide, it's soccer. And most people in the world know that. And so, no, they don't have soccer at the Olympics during the Winter Games, but there's just all this other stuff that you see. And to get back to the soccer point, the reason I bring that up is because the Olympics, which are being held in Milan, I had the opportunity a year before I went to the Olympics to go to Europe with my family as well. And the first place we went, we flew into Milan where they're having the current Olympics. And what I recall mostly about that is the first night that we were there it was the World Cup for soccer or football. And Italy was playing, I think maybe Argentina, or it was a very big game. And I mean, everything stops and you're in these restaurants and celebrations and people are celebrating. So it was really quite interesting. So it's really a cool thing to see the Olympics now in Milan, because Milan is just an amazing place. I would strongly urge anybody who likes to travel the world, please make sure you see Italy, especially Milan. But then you also have the Olympics, and having that connection back to Calgary really is cool. So I would encourage all of you, please get to the Olympics. I think the Summer Games are going to be in Los Angeles in 2028. I think there's going to be games here in Columbus, Ohio, where I live here with the Crew Stadium, where they're going to actually have Olympic soccer. So if you are a fan of Olympic sports, make plans to partake in that as a spectator. All right, folks, I hope you have a very good rest of your evening. Thanks again for tuning in to the Johnny Cleveland podcast, part of the Fanatical Elves Network. We'll catch you next time. Stay tuned for a Fanatical Elves show coming up later this week, and tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock, the Browns Blitz with Rod Bloom and his brother Jeff. Stay tuned for that. Everybody have a great night. Go Browns, and remember, that's right, to keep smiling.